Hello and welcome to the very first episode of what I think I'm going to call the Papercast, a podcast where we talk about the research done by students here at the University of Reading and maybe in the future some academics and some people from outside the institution as well. I am here today with my friend Donna, who is in the archaeology department. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm a PhD student. I'm called Donna de Groene. And I am investigating animal management in the Neolithic, and that's also what my paper is about.
Very cool. I'm very glad I didn't try and pronounce your surname because I don't think I can make those sounds. So, would you like to tell us? Oh, first we should say that this is this a preprint or it's been accepted?
It's a preprint. It's been accepted.
It hasn't been published yet. Okay, and it's in the International Journal of Osteoarchaeology.
Yes.
Yeah, cool. Or it will be.
Yeah.
When it's published. Okay, cool. And so it's entitled "Pigs in the Neolithic of the Eastern Fertile Crescent: New Evidence from Pre-Pottery Neolithic Bentasur and
Shimshara
in Iraqi Kurdistan." So in Iraq, but the bit of Iraq that's run by Kurds. Is it like it's not independent? It's just like a.
It is sort of independent. Okay. It has its own government.
Right. Yeah. It's a bit like Scotland.
Yeah.
Okay. Just have to relate everything back to what I know. Okay, so would you like to tell us a bit about what your paper is about?
Yeah, for sure. So the Neolithic means that it's like the earliest farming settlements, and we think they might have domesticated goats in there, but we don't know so much about the domesticated status of the pigs. So we don't know if people were hunting wild pigs or whether they were managed them in some way. So this paper is just about what the status of pig was in the Neolithic in Iraqi Kurdistan. And this is especially interesting because this region of the world is one of the first regions in the world where farming has started.
Okay, and was it there that sort of livestock farming started
as well as crop farming.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, a little bit less knowledgeable about the animal stuff because I should probably say that I do potatoes. I look at drought tolerance in potatoes, so I know a little bit about the origins of that, not very much at all. And I know less about the origins of sort of cereal crops and then almost nothing about the origins of domesticated animals. So something I did want to talk about is that you've highlighted, I definitely want to ask you this because you've highlighted that one of the key differences between pigs and other livestock animals is that they're omnivorous, and you've said that could change the relationship that they would have with humans. Now, obviously, that it's very easy to imagine why that would be the case with something like cats and dogs because they eat meat, and you can understand that a social animal like a dog that eats meat is going to be useful for hunting, so you're going to have a different relationship with that animal than you would with a cow that you're just going to raise and kill and eat. What about the pigs being omnivorous makes them different in terms of their relationship with humans?
That's very interesting you asked that. In general, we think there's multiple ways in which livestock can have become domesticated. And so that pigs are omnivorous makes them a bit different because we think they might have been attracted to human settlement themselves.
Okay.
So, for example, by food waste which human leave or by crops of humans. And so it could be more of a commensal relationship in the first stages of domestications rather than just a hunter-prey relationship. Okay. So it might have been that pigs came to humans instead of humans coming to pigs.
Okay, so for all the vegetarians, really the pigs brought this on themselves.
Well, I wouldn't want to say that.
If they had just stayed away from us, they wouldn't have been in this mess.
We don't don't know for sure.
Okay.
Like for dogs, we think it's like likely the case to have been like that.
Yeah, I was going to say I've heard cats is similar as well.
Yeah, indeed.
You get all this grain and there's rats.
Yeah, and for pigs we don't really know, so that's what makes them interesting. Okay. And that's like because of their omnivorous status. Also, because they're omnivorous, people can manage them in certain different ways. So you can feed them like your waste, basically, or you can like manage them by leading them through forests. So there's multiple ways humans could possibly manage domestic pigs.
Yeah, because people still do that, don't they? People still have forests where they'll just sort of have free range pigs.
Yeah, like in Spain. Or
Yeah,
yeah.
It seems quite nice. There's a place near where I'm from where they do that, called Jimmy's Farm. This guy called Jimmy used to be big on TV here, and he was just this slightly odd man that had a weird farm, and that was his thing. And he had these pigs that would roam around, and they'd eat like chestnuts or whatever it is that pigs eat when they're in the forest and root around and stuff. And it was all very lovely. But it's interesting to think that that relationship that we have with pigs developed from them coming to us, rather than, I'm assuming therefore that with cows and pigs and sheep, not pigs, cows and sheep and goats, that there was more of a hunting relationship.
Yeah, we think that's more like domestication is more established through like people hunting them, and then at some stages starting to more manage that population. Well, with pigs we don't really know. We don't think it's like this, possibly. Yeah,
it's very interesting. So this is a slightly horrible question because I think we all, as scientists, agree that finding things out for its own sake is really important. But why is it useful to know how these relationships came about?
It makes us understand like the domestication process like over the world better, and it also can give us more insight in like how farming nowadays work, but also knowing things for themselves is of course interesting, but it's really useful to know how farming works also and how sustainable it was in the past, to see how sustainable it can be today.
That's an interesting point. So actually how we can look back and work out how these relationships developed, and maybe how we can make them more sustainable, maybe more ethical as well today.
Of course the species changed a lot, but it's
yes. So I understand if you I don't know if you would know this, but I understand that if you get domesticated pigs and you send them out into the wild, it doesn't take long for them to go back to their sort of roots, and they get hairy and they get tusks and they get aggressive.
Kind of feral, like they're not like, because you can still, there's like seen this in goats for example, like if you leave like them unmanaged on an island and they were like domesticated species, they become a bit different again, but they still keep some of their domestic traits.
Of course, I guess they've gone through that sort of selection process, and they're not going to come out exactly the same as they went in.
No, but it's very interesting because domestication is like a process, so it doesn't end at any point. It's like an ongoing process for forever, and so it can also reverse itself, like you say, sort of like so.
It's very interesting how that happens, but I understand that if you've funneled these animals, you selected them, and you've presumably taken a large amount of diversity out of the population, you're not going to get out just because you release them back into a similar habitat.
Well, it's not per se conscious human selection all the time, especially not in those early stages. We think there might be very little human selection actually. It might be very unintentional. But like most of the changes might have been unintentional. We really don't know how much of it was intentional in those early phases. And for example, with pigs, like there's these strategies nowadays still in New Guinea, where people just keep female wild boar and then keep them at their house and encourage them to interbreed with like male wild boar in the woods. But they come back like because they keep them as like picklets, so like they come back to the house themselves like after like the day, so and then at some point they still slaughter them, but like it's like a very in-betweeny relationship there.
I remember you, because you mentioned that in this paper, and it struck me as sort of counterintuitive why you would not just enclose an entire population, why you would just keep the females and have them sort of come and go as they please. I guess I just don't understand why you would do that, because we obviously where we're from, we don't do that.
It's if you only manage the females and like let them interbreed with like the male wild boar, you don't have to manage those. People think it might be a bit more difficult to have like a commensal relationship with male wild boar because they're quite a lot bigger, they're a bit more aggressive,
they're nasty,
so they're potentially like more dangerous for humans. So it could be that like also these initial phases people more had relationships with the female wild boar rather than the male wild boar, because they're potentially more dangerous for humans.
Yeah, definitely destructive.
Yeah,
they're always
indeed.
talking about trying to bring them back
Yeah.
here, and I think people think that they're sort of nice, sweet animals, but they'll kill dogs and
yeah, they are quite and especially during like puberty and stuff, they can be very Also, female wild boar more live in together, while males live alone. So
okay, so they're more solitary.
So it could be that also they're more likely to develop relationships with humans already. Because the male lives solitary.
Yeah, probably a lot harder to restrain the males as well if they are solitary and they want to get away.
Yeah, indeed.
Because I think in sort of modern agriculture, you keep the boars separated. You don't have very many of them.
No,
they're not just milling around with
at
least uncastrated males.
Yeah. It's always, of course, quite often in managed populations, humans tend to keep more females because they need them for reproduction, and you need less males for that. Yeah. So that's also how you can see sometimes early management. So that's a reason why people might have done that in the past with wild boar. So.
Yeah, it's interesting that's what you think might be a stage of the domestication process is still around.
Yeah.
Just in small pockets of the world. It's fascinating to think that some people got to a stage where they thought this suits what we need. We'll just stop here, and then in other places they were like, no, we need to make these pigs enormous and
yes,
have
indeed.
millions of them running around. Not running around, unfortunately.
But not always anymore.
So I think we've sort of slightly got off track, which is good because it means that it's we're not going to run out of things to talk about. But I wondered if you could tell us what you actually did to address the sort of problems that you've laid out already, the things you want to find out.
Yeah, of course. So I excavated at this site called Bastansour, and we found animal bones there, and I studied those animal bones. So I looked at the size of those pigs and their age. You can establish their age based on bone fusion and dental wear and dental eruption. Because as we just said, based on their age, you can say things about how they were managed. Also, domesticated species do at some point decrease in size. And you can also see, based on statistics, whether you have mainly a male population or mainly a female population. So I measured certain bones and certain teeth of the animals in order to establish those relationships. Also, I tried to look at the diet of the wild boar pigs by doing stable isotopic analysis on bone collagen. But unfortunately that didn't work because the bones weren't well enough preserved for such types of analysis. So this was mainly based in the end on the size and the age of the pigs and their abundancy, because people have, of course, different animals at different sites. And at both these sites, we had a really high amount of wild boar or domestic pigs, which was very interesting in itself. So we also looked at why that might be. That's the basic things I did.
I wish I had a pen now because I've got about 1 million questions from that, and I'm sure I'm going to forget them as we go through them. But I think the first thing that I wanted to ask you is, you actually went and dug these bones out of the ground?
Yes, I did that myself.
I think I've written down how many bones. Do you remember how many bones it was that you said you had? Because I have it written down. And
Bastansour, there were over 6,000.
Yeah,
bones.
I've got 6,117 fragments.
Yeah. So they're not all complete bones. And they're not all pigs. I don't know by heart anymore how many pigs exactly.
Right, okay, so they're not all pigs. And presumably a lot of them are from the same animals as well.
Yeah, that could be. But
of bones,
that could be.
You did say that when you excavate them, you actually made a note of this in the paper. The preservation of the bones is moderate. Full bones have been found, but tend to fall apart after excavation.
Yes.
How annoying! Because presumably you're quite careful when
yes, obviously.
When you're, I've seen Time Team. I'm sure. Do you know what Time Team is?
Yeah, I know what Time Team is.
they need to bring that back. It was so good. Tony Robinson is one of my favourite people. But, you know, you're down there with a paintbrush, scraping away. Do you actually use paintbrushes? Or is that just what they
Sometimes.
do?
It's like more than you do for human bones. But
Right.
yeah, occasionally I do.
But presumably it takes a long time to get these things, especially if it's like a big fragment.
Yeah, it can take a while. But
then it can just crumble.
Yeah, we try to like wrap it in like aluminium foil so it keeps together.
Okay.
Like we did it with human bones as well because there are also loads of human bones at this site. But yeah, it's not great if it falls apart. You try to do some measurements already when it's still in the ground. But that's quite hard. Like
right.
And then you can still get most of the information out of the bones even when they fall apart.
Okay.
So because you can kind of put them back together. It's a bit harder to do measurements, but it's more a shame, but it's not really affecting the research in that way.
Yeah.
So
you can still get all or most of the data you need from a bone that's slightly fallen apart after you've pulled it out.
Yeah.
Okay. And do you take pictures, or is there any other kind of technologies that people use?
Yeah, we quite often like make pictures in the field, and then we did like photogrammetry as well. So we have the 3D images of the bones in the field.
That's very cool.
Yeah, which is quite nice. But I used the pictures, but I haven't really used because you can't really take measurements that well.
Right.
But yeah, you can in the end almost always still take the measurements you need, even if the bones fall apart. It's just a bit more awkward.
Yeah. Yeah. I suppose if you're dealing with things at 10,000 years old, you can't really expect them to have held up too well.
No, indeed.
You said that you could work something, or you could get an understanding of the domestication process by the age profile of the pigs.
Yes.
How is that the case?
So in general, this is also for sheep and goats, people tend to target like prime adults if they hunt animals because they would give the biggest meat gain, obviously. While if people start to manage herds, they more often cull like males before they reach their full body size. That's very much so the case in sheep and goats. And then so you have younger males in general, and like more older animals, like more older females, because they let them reproduce, so they're not the prime adults. So you have a very low amount of prime adults. You have animals just before like their full body size, which would be the males, and like older ones. In pigs, obviously, because they could have used loads of different management strategies, this is a bit harder to see. And also they have larger litters than sheep and goats, so that's also like an increased amount of juveniles could also be like another type of hunting strategy, obviously. But you could still see a possible change in relationships or a change in hunting strategies. So in that way, you can see it by the age of the animals. That's
something I never would have imagined you would be able to work out from the... I mean, it's obvious when you've explained it, but it's true of everything, isn't it? You also said that they tend to get smaller over domestication, which is, again, counterintuitive to what we would think of today, because if you look at a domestic pig, they're enormous.
Really large,
I used to work on a pig farm, and it was one of the most harrowing experiences of my life, but I saw a lot of monstrous animals that didn't look like anything out of nature and were completely not what I was, expecting. And then, you see videos online of wild boar or even feral pigs, and they're a lot smaller. So what is it about early domestication that is sort of has the opposite effect on body size that modern domestication does?
We don't really know why this happens, but they do get smaller in the first few stages, although obviously management precedes this, like getting smaller. So in the first stages of animal management, you can't yet see that they get smaller. Almost all animals get like a smaller skull, and like their brain size decreases, and this is like most prominent in pigs. And we think maybe this is like why we can see already teeth getting smaller before their body size gets smaller, and especially teeth further back in the jaw. But we don't really know why this happens. We know it happens in almost all domestic animals in the beginning and in the early stages. So you can see it, and you can by measuring bones and teeth, you can see this decrease in size very clearly. But it's a thing which happens over several millennia. And we think in loads of animals, management might take a couple of millennia before we can actually see that they actually get smaller. Especially in like their body size rather than like the teeth. So,
does anyone have any ideas about why it might be that they're particularly their brain sizes and their skull sizes shrink?
Yeah, there's loads of things which kind of happen in loads of domestic animals. So they develop like reduced wariness because humans look after them.
Yeah, I've heard that about dogs.
Yeah. But that's kind of the case for all domestic animals, and they become dependent on humans. So maybe they need less. Yeah, it's not really clear why, but maybe they need less brain capacity. But it's not really clear why this happens. And yeah, with pigs, that's very prominent. This decreased brain.
Pigs have quite big brains. Don't
they do. Yeah.
But it would make sense that if they're using it less, because it's such a metabolically costly organ, that it would be, naturally selected against.
Yeah, I wouldn't know exactly. And as I said before, loads of changes by humans are actually unintentional. So, it's not like they...
As is probably the case still today.
Yeah.
So you said as well that you could do some sort of dietary analysis of these animals based on their teeth, which makes sense. But I think you've also said that...
Oh, no, I didn't do it on their teeth.
You didn't do it on their teeth?
No.
Okay, it's on the collagen.
Yeah, it's
just
on bone collagen. Yeah.
How does that work?
So yes, we have stable isotopes in nature. So that's isotopes which do not decay over time, so they stay the same. Even in old bones, they should technically stay the same.
From the point that the animals died.
Yeah. So
because when it's eating plants.
Yeah, that's that. So the plants and the food they eat has certain isotopic amounts, and based on certain metabolic processes, and also, so I did nitrogen and carbon stable isotope analysis, and nitrogen mainly says something about the trophic level of an animal. Could
you explain what that means?
Yes, the trophic level means whether it's how carnivorous it is, basically. Okay. So if it's a herbivore, then it's on the low trophic level and it gets higher up. So it mainly says something about that, but it also says something about the type of plant food the animal consumed. So it will be interesting with pigs to see how carnivorous they are, especially because if they are very carnivorous, we think they might have had a closer relationship with humans because, they're in general, Valpor are 90% herbivores. They do eat, they're opportunistic feeders, but 90% of their normal diet consists of plant material.
Yeah, I was going to say, people don't think of pigs as being meat eaters.
No, indeed. If, for example, humans would give them loads of food waste and they have a very carnivorous diet, then that would indicate that at least the pigs are in some relationship with the humans. So if they would have very high nitrogen 14 levels, then we will think they might have had a certain relationship with humans. And then the carbon analysis mainly says something about types of plant foods consumed. So you can see based on that whether it was eating, mainly two groups of different plants you can distinguish. We can also say something about whether it was likely to be in a closed forest or in a more open area. So that will be interesting. Because if it was very much in the forest, that would also say something about where the pigs were and how humans might have managed them or not. However, I say all this, but my bone collection wasn't well preserved enough to actually. So I did 3 separate runs on the bone collection. I had bone collection in the bones, so I was very happy because sometimes you can't even get any collagen out of bones anymore if they're old. But it wasn't well preserved enough, and it was very subjected to diagenesis, and it gave not complete nonsense signals, but if you did the same bone twice you would get very different signals.
Oh, okay.
So so it doesn't.
And so is the difference between the two groups of plants, that C4 and C3?
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. I should know more about that. Yeah. I don't. I think potatoes is, I'm not even going to say because I don't want to get it wrong and look like an idiot. I think they're C3. If they're not, I'll just cut that bit out. I don't really understand it, to be honest, because I spend so much of my time just looking at higher level signatures in potato that I don't really understand much of the physiology.
The photosynthetic pathways.
Yeah, exactly. And it just confuses me as well, so I don't want to try and learn. Which is a terrible thing to say. I will learn about it one day, but I haven't needed to so far. So, but I did know that you could use the isotopes. So that I guess the two photosynthesis pathways assimilate different levels of isotopes. In different quantities.
Like some fractionate slightly more, like because all plants are more likely to get the lighter isotope, but some fractionate more than the others. So that's why you can see the different signals.
Okay, great. I will do some research because I need to know more about that. So all of this work that you did, apart from obviously the analysis of the bones, getting hold of the bones was in
Iraq,
Kurdistan.
Yeah.
Do you normally say Kurdistan? Is that more? I don't know. The right way
Kurdistan.
Kurdistan. Yeah. Because I knew who the Kurds were, but I'd never heard of Kurdistan before I read this, which is again just showing how dumb I am. What was it like to go and work there?
It was really nice.
Yeah.
People were like really friendly, and we were staying in a very remote village there. So we saw lots of domestication, domestic animals, and it was really cool. It was a very different experience, obviously, from like being here, and you were like, the village it was very different than I expected, because we were quite close to like quite a big city there, Sulemania, and it was actually very progressive and modern. And then that farming village was very much a farming village, but loads of people there also went loads to Sulemania. So it was a really cool mix of cultures, and obviously there has been loads of Western influence there in the last few years. But people were very friendly and very welcoming, and food was nice. We had lots of flatbreads, and it was.
I was going to ask what sort of things you ate. Was it? I know literally nothing about the cuisine of Kurdistan.
Well, it's lots of those flatbreads.
Yeah.
Like for lunch and stuff, with like vegetables and feta and hummus, and and most of the team was vegetarian, so we had like vegetarian dinner almost every day. But like lentils, chickpeas. Also, we ate pasta occasionally. Like you can just get it all there as well. So, and potatoes as well. So
Excellent.
Yeah.
Love to hear it.
Yeah.
They I don't know if they import potatoes. I don't
know.
Sorry. This is going to be a problem for me. It's just any time anyone brings up potatoes, I'm like, oh, tell me about the potatoes. So you had you enjoyed it.
Yeah, definitely.
Enjoyed the field work. Is that? I would imagine that as an archaeologist, that's sort of the part you look forward to.
Yeah, certainly. I like being outside and in the field.
I can't imagine you get into archaeology without wanting to do that.
Well, there are people who like it less.
Oh, really?
Yeah. You don't have to be a field like to be in the field to be an archaeologist.
So there are archaeologists that just want to sit in a lab and look at C3 and C4 levels in.
Well, or pottery or whatever. You don't have to like being outside. I really like being outside.
Yeah, I guess I couldn't imagine that being a possibility, because I would want to be outside with a spade and throwing soil all over the place. Again, I had something I was going to ask you, and it was going to be really interesting, and I've forgotten it. I need a pen for next time. I will bring a pen. I've remembered.
Yeah.
So, do they still have a lot of pigs there now?
No, because it's quite Islamic.
Of course.
So we don't really eat pigs at this point.
Okay, so that's interesting that the place where we think pigs might have been domesticated, they now don't eat pigs.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah. I think I thought that it might be different, not because I didn't think about the religion thing. I thought that maybe the climate might have changed, because you talk quite a lot about the lushness of
vegetation. It's still, you said somewhere in the questions.
Maybe I'm just ignorant of my geographical knowledge. It is
still very quite green.
It is.
Actually. Yeah, because it's on the foothills of the Zagros Mountains, and we came there in spring when I went to excavate, and it was really green and really rainy. And obviously the climate was different in the past. We have some speleothem records, like so from like caves, and you can see like climate change through that. But we don't really know. We still have to do some pollen analysis to see like what kind of vegetation there exactly was at that point of time. So yeah, it could have been a bit different. It might have been a bit more foresty in the past, because now it's very green but very open.
Right.
So that might have been a bit different, but we're not too sure about that at this stage.
But that is that not where you would expect to find pigs?
Yeah, certainly. Yeah. And we think this might have been a bit of a marshy forest thing.
Right.
So that would be like ideal for pigs.
Yeah, but just it's almost certainly just my ignorance. But when I think of Iraq, I don't think marshy forests.
No, it's not. No, that's not really it. It's not marshy forest at this stage, no. But it's not dry and deserty like most people see it as a like dry
Iraq desert.
No, when I sent people pictures of when I was there, like loads of people were like, "Oh, that's very green," and I was like, "Yeah, well, that's normal."
It's normal. I wanted to talk to you about teeth.
Yeah.
Because I don't understand how teeth getting smaller can have anything to do with domestication.
Well,
I don't understand at all.
Like, it's nice you don't understand it, because we don't know what are the processes exactly behind this. But as I said, animals get smaller in the first stages of domestication. And in some cases, for example in Italy, we found in Neolithic that the pigs already have smaller teeth, but their body is still big. So we think the teeth might get smaller first. And it might be because the brain size gets smaller. It might also be because pigs root for food, like wild boar especially, and it might be that becomes less necessary, so that's a reason why because their jaw does become a lot shorter, like especially nowadays. If you look at a pig, it has a really short jaw compared to and the interesting thing in these, well, especially at Bestan Sur, because at Shimshara we didn't have as many bones, is that those pigs as well have quite small teeth compared to other sides, but they're like postcranially, so like their bones are still very big, like bigger than at most other sides. So we think that like because our teeth are quite small compared to the bones, that might be an indication of domestic status. But as you say, you don't really understand why this is, but it is a clear like thing which happens during.
Yeah, I was sort of slightly confused by the processes of natural or artificial selection that would lead to that. Because I understand that there are, in other species, things happen that aren't, as you say, intentional.
Yeah.
Like I understand that, I think this is true, that the floppiness of puppies' ears that they keep through to adulthood is a sort of accident of selection for more juvenile characteristics. So it was.
Yeah, it's not always that we select for more juvenile characteristics. It's like also a thing which happens to all domestic species in general. They kind of always stay at adolescent stage. If you like, they are. But yeah, no, indeed.
I wonder why that happens. If it's because those animals are easier to work with or less aggressive, or.
I guess partly. I guess loads of it is unintentional still. Like there's an experiment now which has been running for like couple of decades in
You're
Russia.
going to say foxes?
Yeah, with foxes.
So cool.
Yeah. But there they do it very intentional, and then you also see that the skin color changes, even though they do it very intentional.
Yeah,
and like over. But it's really hard to.
And they start wagging their tails.
Yeah,
and doing things like that.
Indeed. But it's very hard to relate that to actual domestication, because that's very much a process which happens over several millennia rather than like.
20 years.
Yeah, indeed. So like it's
Yeah, but I guess you can still learn something about the process, even though it's accelerated and even though it's certainly more controlled than it might have been. And I guess we don't know the intentions of these people in the Neolithic about how much they knew what they were doing, how much they didn't.
No, certainly.
It's a bit of an assumption to think that they weren't doing it intentionally. I can understand why they.
No, of course there's some process like behind all this. They weren't just like completely unintentionally just doing something. But we think now that like very much traits and selection was very unintentional. Like how they become was very unintentional. Obviously, they were doing something which thought would help them, like to get more meat gain or like rather than anything else. But the selection for traits, we think, is very much like, we think horse might be quite a intentional domestication.
Horses?
Yeah. Like with an intended pathway, while the others were more like unintended pathways. At least they didn't know where they were going yet because it was a new thing. So
okay, so that you think that they sort of had a practice run of domestication on other animals, and then they got to horses and were like, we know what we're doing now.
Yeah, that's way later. Like, so.
Because they must get bigger quite quickly.
I'm not really sure about that.
No, because I know that the reason for things like chariots very early on was because horses were not big enough to support the weight of a man, and then they were very quickly bred. I think by the Roman age, they were. You could ride
there were
them.
horses before in the Bronze Age already.
Yeah, but I mean smaller.
Yeah, I'm not.
Which is why you see chariots in like Egypt and.
I'm not sure because they're also like quite often like pulled by donkeys. Those chariots.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Poor donkeys. Donkeys get such a hard run. If they were just slightly prettier, like horses are.
I like donkeys. I prefer donkeys.
Oh really?
Horses.
I haven't had much experience with donkeys. My mum was desperate to get a donkey, but just never did, and she ended up getting like 6 goats. And how many pigs have we got at the moment? 3? No, 2. We did have 3. We don't have 3 anymore. It was the whole thing. I think I've asked you, as we've sort of going through what you actually did, all the things I wanted to know about. So I don't know if there are any findings that we haven't talked about that you think are particularly interesting. There was actually, before we do that, one word that I didn't understand and it annoyed me, and it was to do with the teeth.
DP4 or not?
Yes. What is that? Because if you know,
deciduous. So it's a.
It's what? Sorry.
Deciduous. So
right.
It's
what does that mean?
Milk, like like the non-permanent teeth.
Oh, okay. Right. Milk teeth. Yeah. Got you. What? And what's the P4 thing?
Like you count them, like that's a premolar. So it's like deciduous premolar, like humans have as well.
Okay.
And like we also have like M1, M2, M3, so that are the molars. And then like incisor 1, incisor like and canine, which is the.
I didn't know you were a dentist as well as an archaeologist. Very cool. No, the word I did want to know what that was, and I'd forgotten to ask you that. But is it eruption?
Oh yeah, that's like just when teeth get through.
When the tooth comes through.
Yeah.
Okay.
Teeth eruption. Yeah.
Teeth eruption, and that is that affected by domestication when those teeth come through?
Not really, we think.
No.
But we can like age animals based on which
teeth they have.
Which you could do with young as well.
Yes.
But,
yeah. Cool. Well, is there anything that I haven't asked you about that you would like to be asked about? Any findings that?
Oh, I don't know. I guess I told you that the pigs might be in between domestic and wild, which is like a very interesting thing.
But you don't. You said that there was this population of pigs in New Guinea that looked like an intermediary stage.
Yeah.
Are there other sort of intermediate stages that you think might have been the case? Like obviously the example that we have that we know happens is that they have the females and the males are left to do their own thing and they go out and breed and come back.
Yeah, there is certain other intermediate stages that could be around. Like, it could be that there are kind of... It doesn't have to be that we just have a female population and that they have, like, wild males or something. It could be that they are kind of coming to the settlement occasionally and people, like, kind of feed them and kind of encourage them to come back. Or, like, there could be loads of certain intermediate stages we're in. Because, as I said, it's a long process. And we don't really know, but we are... kind of thinking for this population was definitely not just a wild population, as well as for like Shimshara, the other side, but there's less evidence for that, which is very interesting. Because why this is an interesting, why I think this is an interesting paper is because we haven't found that yet so much in this region of the world. So it will be one of the earliest regions where we see this sort of pig domestication, and also they're not as abundant. Like there's not as many pigs in sites in this region. In most other archaeological sites. So in those other Neolithic sites, we don't find them as much. So people rely just less on pigs, and we don't really know why that is either, because there's another site quite close to this site called Charmo, and we think we have early pig domestication there quite early, but people don't rely on pigs that much at all. We have like a way higher abundance of pigs in this site, so that's also an interesting thing in itself, and we don't really know why this is, because we think because that site Charmo is quite close. We visited it when we were there, and it's like a 1 hour drive or something, and the environment seemed to be pretty similar, so there must be also some maybe cultural aspects around it, why people chose to do certain things, or like it could be also based on the time of the year, or like we don't really know this, but that's like also another interesting bit about this site especially.
Yeah, so it's like there seems to be a concentration of a specific type of animal in one location, and that could be because of the environment, it could be because of cultural preferences, it could be because of seasonal effects.
We think this is a year-round site,
right?
But and we think that of most of these Neolithic sites, but it could be something.
So these people aren't mobile. These people are.
No, we think these people are living there the full year through.
Yeah, but it might be that pigs don't migrate, do they?
Some of them do.
They
do.
Yeah. Oh, really? Yeah. I didn't know that.
So, they can migrate quite a bit actually. But they have like home ranges, but they sometimes, it depends on the environment around them. They can migrate bits, and also in the past, humans used to be like sometimes drive pigs around, like at Sardinia, for example. Like they used to like migrate with pigs, because people sometimes think like, oh no, pigs are very like they can be like, as you just said, territorial, but they can also like actually migrate themselves or migrate with humans.
Oh, so you do get sort of nomadic pig herders.
Yeah.
You do?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I thought it was just, goats and sheep and cows.
No, you also have them for pigs. Like,
oh, wow. That's
not
amazing.
As far as distance is quite often, but like...
Well, they've got shorter legs, haven't they?
Yeah, but they can like walk quite a bit as well.
Yeah.
Like people always forget, because they sometimes are like, oh, those people were nomadic, so they couldn't have had pigs possibly, but that's not true at all.
I like the idea of roving gangs of pig herders.
Yeah, like as we said, you can lead them through the forest as well, so you can also do longer distances with them. And
yeah, that's and presumably, would you ever? I don't know if this even makes sense as a question, because I'm not an archaeologist, but would the resolution of your dating technology be good enough to, or is there another way to track movement throughout a year? So they moved in a sort of a cycle throughout the year.
Yeah. We have oxygen isotope analysis, and you can see seasonal differences in oxygen isotopes. And we do that on teeth mainly. That's for another things of my research, not in this paper. For sheep and goat, you can do, because in general their teeth form like layer by layer. So you can see like the differences between the year. For pigs, that's a bit harder, because their teeth form more like humans, so they kind of more mix up. But on their like canines, you can actually, but I didn't have very good ones for that, you can do the oxygen isotope analysis and see where the pigs were kind of more or less in the year. So that's
so if their teeth form all together, how do you do that? How do you do the oxygen analysis?
You can do it on the canines are ever growing.
Right, but doesn't that just tell you where they were when, or what time it was when the pigs were, when the teeth developed?
No, because those are like more layer by layer as well. So you can,
Who knew you could find so much stuff out about dead things from their teeth?
Yeah.
I suppose I did know that, because they always seem to talk about it on police shows, don't they? They always identify people with
teeth,
with dental records.
Yeah, that is true.
And it's just, seems like...
I don't do that.
No, That's good to know. Yeah. You're not doing that in your spare time. You're not going out and...
You can't identify pigs by their teeth either.
You can't?
No. You can't. Well, I don't know.
Like, maybe this pig's a murderer.
Yeah, maybe some people can.
No, well, the only other thing I was going to ask you is what you're going to do next. Or what you're already doing next, because this is obviously finished writing this presumably a while ago.
I'm writing like a paper on the sheep and goat from this site as well, also with isotopic analysis. And I'm now working on a cave site, which has layers from like the Epipaleolithic, so before the Neolithic, till the Iron Age in Iran, but on the coast. So I'm working on that now.
Is that where the seal bones come from?
Yeah, that's where the seal bones come from. Yeah. So.
Let's probably say Donna found seal bones.
Yes.
So that's from the caves?
Cave, yeah.
A cave, singular.
Yeah.
Right.
But that's just like layers and layers of human documentation. So that's really nice because you can really see how diet and...
That's reminded me of something I've always wanted to ask an archaeologist. And there's probably a really simple explanation for it. What is it? Why is there a correlation between how old things are and how deep you find them? Is it just that things build up over time?
Yeah, in general, yes. Like there's just like a constant, like sort of types of soil by rivers, wind, and like by plants, which like degrade and like that just layers up. This site is especially interesting because this is a tell site, Bestansur. So like it's actually layers of occupation. So like the houses themselves and the occupation themselves. It's like a hill which is completely formed by continuous years of like occupation.
People just bringing things in and building.
Yeah,
and
build like
knock
maybe
it down
like,
and build on top of it.
Yeah, like mud brick buildings. It's like kind of clay type things. They just like collapse after on and they just build there again. So that's just completely human formed. Like
that's amazing. Oh, I guess we still sort of do similar things like that today. Like, have you ever been to Edinburgh?
Yeah.
And they've done that there.
Yeah.
You can go down whole streets and then you look up and they've just put new buildings on top of the old buildings. They just like leveled it and then we're like, right, start from here. And it's the same, I think, in like York. You can go down and you'll see like Viking buildings that they've just built on top on.
Yeah.
I think I went into a church that had something like that somewhere
like
in York.
Underneath.
Go down into the basement and it's just like a house or the skeleton of a house. Humans are so lazy. We just knock stuff down and carry on building, and we still do it. We won't learn our lesson. So you're already working on sheep and goats, and possibly seals.
Yeah.
If you're a seal and you found yourself in a cave, you're in trouble. That can't ever be good for a seal.
Well, I guess.
Underwater caves, maybe.
Yeah, I guess there's some caves in the sea. But I guess those were already dead when they were in the cave.
And I'm still confused about where these seals come from.
Caspian Sea.
That's a lake though, isn't it?
Yeah.
So they're like freshwater seals.
I think so, yeah.
That's quite cool.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think there's any reason why they wouldn't be able to live anywhere. Because you get them in the Thames.
Yeah.
And they presumably come from the sea.
Yeah.
So maybe they're just not bothered by the salinity of the water.
You have them in more like lagoons and stuff as well. So
presumably they weren't domesticated.
No
domestic seals.
No, unfortunately not. That will be in Discovery.
That would be amazing.
Very early seal domestication.
The fenced off bit of water. And they've got the males can go out and do whatever they want. But you've got fenced off female seals. I'm presumably they'd be a great animal because of all the fat on them. Although, is it...
Yeah, people can use the fat. Yeah, definitely.
That would be great.
Yeah.
If you could domesticate seals. Maybe that's what we do next.
Yeah.
Make millions.
Yeah.
I don't know how. But I think we can get there. Well, that was all really interesting. I really enjoyed doing this. Hopefully it was good for you.
It was nice.
I don't know. Hopefully I asked some questions that weren't terrible.
No, they were nice. Some terrible questions at all.
Yes, I really enjoy talking to people that are sort of doing a PhD project, but that has nothing to do with mine.
So you hear like completely different.
Yeah, just different techniques.
Yeah.
But there's always overlap. Like obviously the photosynthetic stuff, which I should know more about. That you can always find something that you know a little bit about, and they might know more about.
Yeah, indeed.
But it's nice to hear about techniques that you would never think of doing, and a lot of times I think, talking to someone that does something slightly different, you get ideas about what you might like to do. I'm mainly annoyed that you get to look at lots of species and then publish them as separate papers, and I am just doing one, and it takes me forever to do any of that. Did I tell you about the fox?
Oh yeah, which
Yeah.
What is it really?
It's quite nice actually. This is a nice bit of insight in how science actually goes down. I set up an experiment and it was all going really well, and I had these sensors in the soil of the plants that I was growing to monitor the moisture, and then a fox just came and ripped them out and destroyed one of them, and now I have to just try and get it all up and running again.
Oh,
but
right.
it's later in the year, so the season's slightly different.
You still have the data from the sensors.
I think so, but I don't know. But it doesn't really matter too much because it was before any of my like experimental protocols were put in place.
Oh, right.
So all it was doing was making sure that they were watered properly.
Oh.
But now I've got to get another one, and
quite annoying.
So annoying. Yeah. So that's how it sometimes goes down.
Those,
Bones break apart.
Yeah.
And foxes destroy things.
Yeah. Commensal animals as well now.
Is there anything you would like to say? Anyone you want to thank? Anyone? Any admin stuff that you have to do?
Admin. All right.
You'd like to talk about?
Well, it's not just my paper. It's also like more.
Have you forgotten who wrote it with you? Because I can show you if you've forgotten.
No. It's also.
You were looking as if you'd forgotten.
No, I know. Robin Bendry and Roger Matthews.
Do you want to say that again? Because I was ruffling the papers. Sorry.
Robin Bendry and Roger Matthews.
And are they?
Roger Matthews is my supervisor who's leading the project, and Robin Bendry is not officially my supervisor, but he worked on the project before me. He's another zoo archaeologist.
Oh, cool. So he was he doing it as his PhD project as well, or
no? He was just employed by the project. It was postdoc for him, and he's now in Edinburgh. But yeah, he helped me with like IDs and stuff as well. Cool. So yeah, it's very good to discuss with somebody about. Yeah, someone that knows slightly more than you. People. There's so many little tricks of the trade you pick up after doing something for a long time that you really only learn by talking to people that have done it for longer than you. And it is so helpful to have someone that you can just be like, just give me your experience and your wisdom. And normally people will as well, which is a great thing about doing a PhD project or any kind of academic work. Because people are most of the time happy to help. Yeah, normally. Yeah. I mean, there's some people that aren't. No, but... I'm not naming any names. But most of them are, yeah. Most of them are, yeah. Well, thank you very much for doing this. Thank you. It was the first one. I didn't know how it was going to go. I think it's gone pretty well. Yeah, I guess you might have to edit it quite a bit. Might have to edit a little bit. I'd probably take the bit about, my carnivorous pigs out. But... I think it was good. I hope it was good. No, I enjoyed it. Yeah. I don't know if anybody likes to listen to this, but I think people will like to listen to it. It's got pigs. People love pigs. Cute animals. I like pigs, but I don't know about the rest of the world. Archaeology, very cool. Quite jealous that you get to do that, and go and look at caves and places all around the world, and I have to stay here and look at potatoes. But it's fine. I do like potatoes. Not as much I know that. I know you like potatoes. I think everyone that knows me knows that I like potatoes. Anyway, thank you for doing this. Thank you. And thank you for watching, if you're watching up there, or if you're listening down here. I just pointed at the microphone, but people that are listening don't know that I did that. And hopefully there'll be another one of these relatively soon. I don't know who I'm going to have on the next one. Okay. Probably someone from agriculture, because it's just easier to find people. I can find you people from meteorology if you want to. If you want to rope people into this, that would be fantastic. I'll try to. And then they'll blame you for roping them into it and not me, which would be even better. Thank you for listening to the Papercast, and I will see you in the next episode.